There's really just three negative emotions we suffer from: sadness, anger, and fear. Because they clearly feel so different from one another, there must be a cause of why I feel sad when something happens versus afraid or angry. It's actually an underlying belief that's causing this emotional reaction, and the emotion is the pointer or the signal to which of those beliefs is operating in the mind. You just need to develop a friendly relationship with your ego. Your ego isn't an entity that exists that you can have a friendly relationship with or make an enemy out of. The ego is not a noun, it's a verb. It's an activity in your mind, and so you either engage with it or you don't engage with it, but you can't have a relationship with it. You can't befriend a shadow on the wall, it just makes you crazier. You have to see it for what it is. It's an illusion. There is no entity there to befriend or to fight against. It's just your own mind reflected back to you, your own ignorance being reflected back to you. And so what you need is wisdom to know the difference.
To get to that place where you can create some space between you and the emotion does take work. Building that muscle of being able to detach from what you're feeling, I think is important.
You can't escape your karma. You can't make life happen. You can't control anything. At very best, you can be in cooperation with life. You'll find that you actually can't resist the things you don't like. They will always come back to you until you accept them and learn from them and flow, cooperate with them.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dreamcatcher Podcast, a place where your dream can find a voice. I'm your host, Celine Chenoy. Thank you to all of you who return every week to tune in to become a better version of yourself. Make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already, and rate our show if you enjoy this episode. If you feel weighed down by emotional pain, you are not alone. So much of your struggle may trace back to just 3 basic beliefs you might not even realize you carry. You can actually make real changes when you understand what's behind your pain and learn what to do about it. In this episode, you'll hear from Aaron Abke, the author of The 3 Beliefs of Ego, A Sufferer's Guide to Freedom. Aaron doesn't ask you to fight your ego, but to see it in a new way and spot the patterns in yourself. He's here to explain more. Aaron Abke is a spiritual teacher and thought leader who delivers a fresh new perspective on self-realization. His online academy for consciousness expansion, 4D University, has more than 10,000 members. Multiple Gaia TV series, chart-topping spirituality podcasts, and SiriusXM radio programs have showcased Abke's passion and purpose, which is to awaken this planet to the awareness of our oneness. Aaron's approach to healing is straightforward and filled with hope. He believes that facing your pain teaches you more than running away from it ever could. In this episode, he'll share tools and a simple mindset shift to help you let go of the old stories that keep you stuck. Tune in and learn how to step out of ego-driven suffering and start living with more freedom and clarity. Hi, Aaron.
Cool.
Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks so much for having me today.
No, it's wonderful to have you on. So, as I was preparing for this interview, I noticed that your ideas tend to blend spirituality, religion, and modern thought in a way that's quite unique. And this comes through in your work and more recently in your new book titled The 3 Beliefs of Ego. And I want to start our conversation by asking you, how do you think bringing these different perspectives is helpful today, given all the unrest and instability that we're facing in our world today?
Well, I think it's always helpful for the world to learn more about the ego, because that's always the ultimate problem that plagues us, first and foremost. But there's been this interesting resurgence of religion, and especially Christianity here in the States. And I have a, huge background in religion growing up as a third generation pastor's son and all of that, and deconstructed from religion at 23, 24, and really came full circle back in my early 30s back to the teachings of Jesus and saw him in a completely different way than I was raised to see him, and really just understood, I think, the historical person a lot better versus sometimes scholars will call it the Jesus of history versus the Jesus of theology, and how Jesus was kind of paganized and turned into this kind of Greco-Roman demigod who pre-existed and all this stuff. And I think that that has been a very damaging view of Jesus for the last 2,000 years because it places him on a pedestal outside of ourselves and turns him into something we can't even relate to anymore. How do I relate to a pre-existent logos, eternal, consubstantial second person of the Trinity who came down from heaven, lived a perfect life, died for my sins? There's nothing at all that's relatable about that Jesus. And yet the historical person, Yeshua the Nazarene, was a real man, a real person like you and I. He was a God-intoxicated Jewish mystic rabbi who came to teach us what he believed was the kingdom of God, which he said was already now and at hand. And he said continually, follow me, follow me. If you love me, keep my commandments, and greater work shall you do than I have done. And it was always a gospel of emulation. And so I find Jesus to be so inspiring and worshipful today, not because I think he came from heaven as a God to die for my sins, but because he showed us the perfect way to God. And he was the example, the demonstration. And I think that that's what humanity needs more than anything. We need an example. We need an inspiration to follow and to know, hey, look what's possible for us. We can follow God. We can live righteously. And as inspiring and worshipful as the person of Jesus was, that's not what inspired Jesus himself. Jesus did not become what he was because he confessed Jesus as his personal Lord and Savior and believed in his resurrection. He became what he was because he knew within himself, I and the Father are one. And I think humanity needs to know that in the same way that Jesus did, if we are going to get ourselves out of this mess that we've put ourselves in.
So what I'm hearing is that by humanizing him, you are making him more accessible, and just the lessons that his life demonstrate feels like it's something that people can emulate.
Yeah, well said. Making Jesus more accessible is my heart's greatest passion, because I've loved Jesus my entire life since I can remember. To my earliest memories, I was praising Jesus in church at 3 years old, and he has continued to be the driving inspiration of my life. But he was an inspiration in a different way until I deconstructed from Christianity. And I found so much more closeness and love and devotion to Christ once I knew he was a real man like me who found his union with God within himself and lived it and demonstrated it in the best way possible. And if he can do that, so can I. I can follow Jesus. I can do as Jesus did. And to me, that's what a real religion is, if it's anything. It can't be about something external to us that we believe in our brain and we confess with our mouth, and then something happens, a transaction takes place in heaven, we're forgiven, etc. That's all man-made theology, none of which Jesus taught. If you peruse through the teachings of Jesus, you will not find a single tenet of Christianity in his mouth. You will never find Jesus once ever telling anybody to confess him as their Lord and Savior, that he was going to die on the cross for their sins, that they need to believe in his resurrection so they can go to heaven. Jesus forgave people's sins long before he went to the cross, and his gospel was very clear. Every time Jesus is asked in the synoptic gospels, good teacher, what must I do to enter eternal life? This is in Mark 10:18, Matthew 19:16, Luke 18:18. What must I do, Savior, to have eternal life? He doesn't say what any Christian pastor would say. He says, keep the commandments. He lists them, and then he says, and chief of all, love your neighbor as yourself. And he goes on to clarify that this is the single and greatest commandment of all. And if you do this one thing, love God, love neighbor, you have fulfilled the entire law of God. And it's like, if that's not a salvation teaching from Jesus directly, I don't know what is.
And I think it's so important for younger people to hear that, because they are getting increasingly skeptical about religious teachings, and there is a higher degree of secularity now kind of taking over, because they're wondering, like, is this something that we can apply in our lives? It almost feels that unreachable. So I'm glad
Yeah.
that you're breaking it down for people, for the masses, and making it seem like, yeah, this is something that is relatable. This is something that we can practice in our daily lives. This Christ consciousness.
Yes. Christ consciousness. It's demonized by religion as some kind of new age thing, but it's just a simple term. It means to be
Mm,
conscious of the Christ in you.
yeah.
And there is no question that Jesus taught that the Christ is in all. Jesus rebuked his closest disciples in parables and analogies who confessed him as Lord, Lord. And he says, whoa, 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 whoa. Not everybody who just confesses me as Lord, Lord is going to enter my kingdom, but only the one who does the will of my Father. So when you did not love the least of these, when you did not take in the widow, the orphan, love the needy, feed the hungry, you did not do it to me. And then he says, so depart from me, you who practice evil. It's like, we can't really get a more straight up rebuke from the master than that, right? He says, don't you dare just call me your Lord, Lord, and confess me with your mouth and not love your neighbor, because I'm in all of those people. And if you
Mm,
don't love them, you don't love me. It's like, that's Christ consciousness, as simple as it gets.
yeah. So it's clear that you have a vast amount of knowledge in theology. It totally comes through. But I'm so what was the personal experience or the awakening that led you to write a book about the ego and to shed some light on it, especially focusing on these three specific beliefs that you write about in the book: lack, attachment, and control.
Yeah, well, there's always this interesting verse that I read that I didn't understand as a Christian, but only began to understand once I deconstructed from religion, which is when Jesus said numerous times, if you want to be my disciple, or anyone who wishes to be my disciple, let him first deny himself, take up his cross, and then follow me. I'm like, what does he mean, deny myself? Maybe he just means like be humble or something like that. But take up your cross, that's a pretty extreme image, and I just couldn't put it together. But
Mhm.
once I started studying Eastern philosophy, especially Hinduism, Taoism, Buddhism, and the Eastern mystical traditions, I understood this thing called the ego very well. And it was like, oh, that's the whole spiritual path. It's about the transcendence of this personal self, this personal ego that thinks and believes and acts as if it's separate from God, separate from others. And the entire spiritual path is literally nothing but the path of transcending the false self that Jesus pointed to. Deny the self. What Jesus clearly couldn't have meant, deny your true self, deny the Christ in you, right? That's not what he meant. He meant deny the false self, obviously, and that would be the ego. And so I became very obsessed with understanding what is the ego? Why do we have an ego? Did God create it? Did I create it? Like, I don't get it. And so I got into Eckhart Tolle's work and some others as well,
Mhm.
and studied them pretty obsessively for many years. And I was 27, I believe, and I was working at Google as a personal trainer in Mountain View at the Googleplex. And I had gotten divorced from my Christian wife at 26 and moved back home to California with my parents. I'm living alone in the Bay Area. I have no friends. I'm just in this total dark night of the soul. And I deconstructed from religion. So I didn't even know what I believed about God, really. And I'm trying to rediscover myself. Like, who is Aaron Abke without being a Christian? It was a huge identity crisis.
Yeah.
And so I would go up to my balcony at lunch and listen to Eckhart Tolle lectures on my lunch break
Hmm.
and watch the clouds pass by. And I just felt like it was the only time of the day that I had some inner peace from the turmoil in my mind, the suffering. And one day into doing this routine, Eckhart Tolle was teaching a lecture where he was making light of things that the ego says. And he would make examples like, if only people would see how important I am, then I would truly be happy. And then he would laugh,
Good
and the
imitation.
audience would laugh. Thank you. I've had a lot of practice.
Yeah, clearly.
And so I'm up there like listening to this and I just started laughing. And
Yeah.
as you probably know, laughter can be a very powerful way to realize truth sometimes,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
And that's definitely what happened to me that day. I was on this balcony laughing at these repeated remarks that Eckhart was imitating of the ego and just realizing how true it was. Like, yeah, that's totally what my mind says to me all day long. And I just saw the joke of it all. Like, the ego is just almost like a tape recorder in the background on a
Hmm.
loop. And I just keep thinking it's me that I'm hearing, but it's just a tape recorder. It's not me. And
Yep.
so I kind of laughed myself into this samadhi state And for 2 weeks, I was in that state where it was just like a curtain was pulled back and I was just permitted
Mm.
into another realm where everything physically looked the same, but it was just sparkling with a new like majesty behind it. And I
Mm.
really saw the truth of oneness for the first time, that it's all just one great energy manifesting, dancing within itself. And we're all that. There's no separation.
Mm.
And it was just the most blissful, joyful, loving realization ever. And every person I saw was just me in another body, and I just loved them. And I was in perfect peace and happiness for 2 weeks with no trace of suffering. And I woke up 2 weeks to the day when my alarm went off, and I noticed on my phone that it was 2 weeks that I had had that experience. And I thought, wow, I've been in this state unbroken for 2 weeks now, just so
Mhm.
much happiness and peace. And I thought to myself, I wonder if this is enlightenment. Maybe it's happened, like Eckhart or something. And you might say, well, anybody would think that at that point, right? But that was the first ego thought coming back online and trying to claim the state of enlightenment for itself. And I didn't have the wisdom or insight to see it yet. And
Mhm.
so that very day, the ego started creeping back in, and I started this downward spiral back into the old state of consciousness and dark night of the soul I was in. And it was like being cast out of heaven or something. It was like I'd been given a free tour of heaven, a free sample of enlightenment, but then I was just found unworthy to keep it or something. And I was cast out of heaven like Lucifer.
Yeah.
And I often will say, like, it's really awful when you have to go to hell for a while. Like, hell is always bad. But hell is a lot worse when you've been to heaven for a while and then you go to hell.
Yeah, you
The
get a
contrast
taster
is
of
just
it.
so intense.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that was the big catalyst that started me off on this journey of, I was into all this vanity at that point. I was like a full-time bodybuilder, professional fitness model in San Francisco, and personal trainer, of course.
You were in the thick of it, that's superficial kind of
Yes,
world. Yeah.
absolutely. Superficial vain living. And
Vain
I was trying to
living.
find some purpose,
Yeah.
like if I have a fit body, people will like me and then I'll be happy. So I just saw through the illusion of that and cast it all aside and said, I'm going to do everything I can to get back to that heavenly state of consciousness again. And it
Yeah.
began with the question of, what is my suffering? What is it constituted from?
Yeah.
And very quickly to me, it was clear that there's really just three negative emotions we suffer from: sadness, anger, and fear. And there's many variations and flavors of those emotions, but those are the three root negative emotions: sadness, anger, and fear.
Okay.
And because they clearly feel so different from one another, there must be a cause of like why I feel sad when something happens versus afraid or angry. And that's the question that led me to understand the three beliefs of ego, that it's actually an underlying belief that's causing this emotional reaction. And the emotion is the pointer or the signal to which of those beliefs is operating in the mind.
Yeah. And I would like to clarify because you mentioned the term suffering a lot. You say that once you recognize and change your beliefs, you could end suffering. What do you mean by suffering in this context?
Yeah, that's the question. Um, by suffering, a lot of people think I mean, challenges in life, pain, uncomfortable
Yeah.
experiences. And
And they
that's
mention
certainly
in
not what I
Buddhism
mean.
too. I just want to mention you heard a lot in Buddhism and the vernacular that they use.
Yeah. Yeah. Buddhism talks a lot about suffering.
Yeah.
The Buddha talked a lot about suffering.
Yeah.
When I talk about suffering, I mean specifically what I think Buddhism and every good Eastern tradition means, which is our resistance to pain and challenge and so forth. Our belief that we're separate and therefore struggling against our experience, that's suffering. The conflict we create with reality. And that's absolutely possible to transcend. Difficult experiences, pain, these things are not possible to not experience as a human. It's baked into it, right?
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
resisting those things is the suffering that we create, that the mental suffering that amplifies the experience so much more. And that's when I learned in that experience, without having suffering for 2 whole weeks, I can no longer argue with this fact that, wow, it is possible to not suffer. And I experienced painful things in those 2 weeks and it wasn't a problem. So that gave me the proof of like, okay, I can't argue with this anymore.
Yeah. And how were you able to get there? Did you just take like a objective perspective? Did you create some distance from what was going on?
You mean in that 2 week experience?
Yes, during that 2 week experience. When you said you were able to manage, you know, the challenges that you were facing?
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing was there wasn't like a doer that was doing it at all. There wasn't somebody who was managing anything. It was just like I lost the ability to resist, to complain, to control because I just saw reality so clearly that
Mm,
everything is happening for my good. And
yeah.
so contrast is good. That's how we learn and gain wisdom. And so when a challenge happens, of
Hmm.
course you should accept it and learn the lesson from it. That was just kind of the ordinary
Yeah.
perspective I had that I then lost once the experience was over and I went back to resisting it again.
Yes. And you did mention this in the book about developing that mindset where you are able to see the ego as a teacher and not an enemy, and then see it from a place of compassion rather than resistance.
Yeah, I think in that chapter I kind of begin the book dealing with some of the misguided definitions of ego,
Yeah.
one of which is the ego is your enemy, best-selling book. The ego,
Yes.
some people will say the
Was
ego
that
is
by
not the
Ryan
problem. You
Holiday?
just need to develop. I think so. Yeah, Ryan
Okay, yeah.
Holiday. And I'm
It
sure the
was
book is good, but
Stoicism. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah. And I understand what he's getting at. Like the
yeah.
ego is what's causing your problems. But nevertheless, when we are lazy with the way we define ego, it can cause problems for people because a lot of people are going to read that and go, oh, it's literally an enemy, and try to resist it. And that doesn't work. Nor does the other definition we hear of like, well, you just need to develop a friendly relationship with your ego.
Yeah.
It's like, no, your ego isn't an entity that exists that you can have a friendly relationship with or make an enemy out of. The ego is not a noun, it's a verb. It's an activity in your mind. And so you either engage with it or you don't engage with it, but you can't have a relationship with it.
Mm. So kind of befriending it so that you are able to manage it and you're in the driver's seat versus the ego kind of taking over and just running amok, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, I also will say that's just because those definitions aren't objectively accurate, in my opinion, doesn't mean there might not be some value in somebody who, let's say, they've been demonizing their ego for a long time on the spiritual
Mm,
path, and the ego's the enemy, it's the bad guy. They might actually benefit from adopting the attitude for a while. No, I need to love and befriend my ego, and that
mhm.
can be helpful for their progress. But all I'm saying is at a certain point, even that definition will outlive its usefulness, and you'll realize you can't befriend a shadow on the wall. It just makes you crazier. You have to see it for what it is. It's an illusion. There is no entity there to befriend
Okay.
or to fight against. It's just your own mind reflected back to you, your own ignorance being reflected back to you. And so, what you need is wisdom to know the difference.
Interesting. Okay. Thanks for making that distinction. So let's dive into some of the three beliefs that you write about in the book. Let's start with a really common one, which is the belief of lack and the sense that I am not enough and something is missing from my life. And I think that this seems to be driving a lot of suffering in modern day life. What is your advice for those who are trying to recognize its impact in their life? And what can we do to begin to shift it?
Yeah, the belief in lack is definitely the primary kind of concept that I try to hit head on in the book and really leave the reader with an understanding of, because the belief in lack is the first belief of ego. And then the second and third beliefs really just kind of flow downstream from the
Mm,
belief in lack. So I'll give you the three beliefs. So the ego is the belief in separation first and foremost. I'm a separate self, an isolated actor in time and space, apart from God, life, others, etc. But a lot of the talk in spirituality about the belief in separation can become like confusing or seem ambiguous because it's sort of like, what does that mean though? Like, how does that show up in my life that I think I'm separate? And that's what I became interested in was like, I couldn't really get at this belief in separateness because it filters through everything I think and believe. It's like the water I'm swimming in. So, how does separation act itself out through me and through my mind was the more interesting question. And that's when these three beliefs started to come through. And the first one is, of course, lack. If I'm separate from life, the universe, God, then I must be lacking. And I must need to fulfill that lack somehow. So, as soon as I think I'm lacking, and I believe that, it will sort of create the second belief right after it, which is I call it attachment or outcome happiness. And the
Mm-hmm.
logic goes like this. If I am lacking something, purpose, fulfillment, value, love, whatever, then it makes sense that I could potentially go out into the world and fulfill my lack with positive, pleasurable outcomes of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can fill that void I feel inside. So the ego immediately creates desires and attachments to things that it
Yeah.
believes will fulfill it. And then as soon as you have attachment to something, that
Or
implies the
someone.
third belief, which is
Yeah.
I'm in control.
Yeah.
Someone, something, yeah, anything. It will imply to the mind, well, then I'm in control. I can go out and do it. I can get that attachment that I want and fulfill myself. I'm the one who makes life happen. I'm the one who makes the wheel of time turn. And so we all live with this belief that we're isolated individual actors kind of apart from life. And so that means that if an experience happens I don't like, I could resist it. I can stop it. I can stay the hand of the universe from doing what I don't want it to do to me and so forth. And of course, that's not true, right? You can't escape your karma. You can't make life happen. You can't control anything. At very best, you can be in cooperation with life, but it's like, yeah, keep resisting things you don't like and tell me how that works out for you. You'll find that you actually can't resist the things you don't like. They will always come back to you until you accept them and learn from them and flow, cooperate with them. So those are the three beliefs, right? And so what I teach in the book is that whatever belief it is, we know it's always held under the belief in lack first and foremost. Lack is the foundation of everything ego does. And only after it has a lack belief can it have an attachment to something.
Yeah.
And then can it try to control and resist life.
That makes
So
sense. Yeah.
no matter which belief it is, lack is the real
The
problem
foundation.
at the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
Yes, the foundation of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I would imagine a lot of people have that sense of lack because probably things they experienced in their childhood or, the environment they grew in, and they don't address those voids that they kind of feel within them.
Yes. The belief in lack is a prepackaged part of the human program. We
Is
all
it?
come into life. It's yeah, it's been evolved
I thought
through the
we were
human
born
being for
whole and complete. I've heard that, like, when we were babies.
yeah, our souls are absolutely whole and
Yes.
complete. Who we really are as spiritual beings is
As spiritual
perfect and
beings,
eternal.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then the
But
ego takes over, right? Yeah.
the human brain has evolved through evolution for however long we've been here. And we can see this as an echo of our ancient past of like, this is how humans have survived is we got to get our needs met. We have to know, what am I lacking today? Food, water, shelter, family, home,
Mhm.
whatever. And so it's the natural evolutionary drive. Go fulfill your lack. And so that belief has evolved over the eons, and it's turned into this very complex kind of existential lack now, where as we grow and mature, once the brain
Goes up the
develops, a
Maslow's
little
hierarchy.
tiny,
Yeah.
yeah, a baby that can't even think conceptually yet can't think that it's lacking. But the belief is in the subconscious nonetheless. And as we grow older, it starts to gain experiences and evidence for the belief. And so here's the interesting thing, Celine, is that when we get traumatized, in spirituality, we think that the trauma, the experience, was where the problem started.
Hmm.
But in fact, the problem is even prior to the trauma. It's the underlying belief in lack itself. And experiences or traumas just reinforce the lack belief and give it evidence. And that's why they hurt so bad. But if you really think about it, if we came in with full knowledge and awareness of our eternality as spiritual beings, knowing we are whole and perfect and one with God, then we couldn't be traumatized. We would have no reason to suffer from anything, knowing we're perfect and eternal. And so it's because we undergo this veil of forgetting as we incarnate, we don't remember where we come from, who we are, that we're one with God. And so this belief in lack and separateness is automatically there as a result of that. And then painful experiences happen that keep feeding it and showing, look, it's true, you really are lacking because your dad left you and your mom abused you and so forth. And so it's not actually the experiences from our childhood that cause the belief in lack, although it's very good to go back to them and heal the experience. If we don't deal with the belief in lack itself and like see it as a metaphysical impossibility, then we will keep collecting new experiences that will reinforce it
Reinforce it.
anyways. So
Yeah.
the belief is always the problem at the end of the day.
And do you think not having some form of spirituality, some sort of practices or seeing the world as a benevolent place or something that can support your evolution, does not having that exacerbate all of these beliefs, these negative beliefs?
Without question. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I saw that as a Christian, that we say we believe all the right things. My sins are forgiven. I'm going to heaven when I die. I'll never go to hell. I'll be with God forever. Yay, yay, yay. But I still suffer tremendously every day. I still struggle with all the same vices as before, basically. And this is kind of the Christian experience is we say that our sins are forgiven, yet we go on sinning and we go on suffering nonetheless. And so it's like, how exactly are my sins, have they been atoned for if they keep showing up in my life? It's because I still misunderstand the nature of God, reality, the self. I still think I'm separate. I still think I'm lacking. And so guilt perpetuates itself nonetheless. Even though we say we know we're forgiven, as soon as we sin, we get overwhelmed with guilt. I'm lacking holiness and worthiness. Oh no.
Mm-hmm.
And on the cycle goes. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, if somebody doesn't come to these, and really they're kind of like philosophical insights, right? About the nature of reality. You have to understand that oneness is the only metaphysical possibility, and you have to know that and have it be settled for you. Separateness is not possible. Lack is not possible in God's universe. And so once you know that, it starts to leave your experience more and more. And you just naturally embody that love and that oneness that Yeshua demonstrated so effortlessly. But if your foundation's off, as Jesus even taught, everything else is going to be off too.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the upcoming launch of my new book titled The Nomadic Soul, a seeker's guide to finding a sense of self and belonging in the modern world, which highlights a profound yet often unexplored part of your identity that holds the key to everything from answering your biggest questions to finding deeper meaning and joy in everyday life. Visit thenomadicsoulbook.com to learn more, download a free chapter, or to buy a copy. Can you unpack what the whole notion of oneness? I mean, we keep hearing it. It's become almost cliche now when in the spiritual circles. Can
For
you
sure.
give us your definition of oneness?
Yeah, I talk about this in chapter 6, I think, of the book. So here's what oneness isn't. Oneness doesn't mean that there's no uniqueness or, differentiality in creation. Oneness doesn't mean we're all just like automatons or something. There's much uniqueness and diversity in oneness. What oneness means is that all things exist in relationship to one another, that there is no actual separateness from anything. Nothing in the universe can exist in a vacuum or isolation. And you can do this thought experiment, right? You can try to think of one thing in the universe that is truly existing in absolute isolation with no connection whatsoever to anything else. And you'll go, oh yeah, there's nothing. Nothing in the universe is separate. So that's what oneness means, is that everything exists in relationship. And so I use that framework of relationship throughout the book to help the reader understand oneness better. And then we get into like, what does relationship really mean? What does it mean to be in relationship with something is a big concept as well.
Okay. All right. So I want to talk about the emotional guidance system because this is a brilliant framework that you have outlined in your book. And the purpose of it is to show, which of these beliefs are really active within us. So can you please walk us through this system?
Yeah, I think the emotional guidance system is the one, like sometimes people ask me like, if you could leave the reader with one thing from the book that they really get, what would it be? And I always say the emotional guidance system,
Yeah.
because this is why we suffer, right? We resist our negative emotions and we resist them because we don't understand them. We see them as enemies coming to haunt us or abuse us or something. And so I spend a whole chapter, chapter 3 in the book, is about the emotional guidance system and this understanding that we have no false feelings. We have no wrong emotions. In fact, all of our emotions, positive or negative, are always correct. And this flies in the face of conventional thinking, right? Where we've all been taught our whole life since childhood. Well, you can't trust your emotions because your emotions will lead you astray. So you got to think rationally, you know? And it's so off track that it's actually the opposite is the case, that by the time you feel a negative emotion, you've already gone astray. And the emotion is trying to pull you back into alignment. It's trying to reflect to you how you've gone astray. So the question is, how do we go astray? Of course, we go astray in our thinking and perceiving. So here's what the emotional guidance system is. It's very simple. It's that your emotions always and only reflect your self-perception back to you. That's the only thing emotions actually mirror, is how you are seeing yourself in this moment. And so emotions do not speak to your circumstances. And because most people think that they do, they think your emotions can lead you astray, right? You get angry, and so you think your anger is telling you to go fight that person or whatever. And the emotion isn't telling you that. It's impossible that an emotion could tell you to do something, because emotions are non-conceptual. Emotions are not concepts. They're pure feminine energy. They're pure feeling and sensation. And so emotions are reflections, not directions. They are inherently feminine, not masculine. Thoughts are masculine, feelings are feminine. And these are the two polarities of what we are. And we got to figure out how to get them in union with each other. And we do that by understanding, oh, my emotions reflect my thoughts, the quality of my thinking. And so when I think about myself in a way that God does not think about me, let's say, I will feel some kind of negative emotion. So I'm lacking, I'm unlovable, I'm not good enough, I'm a failure, negative, negative, negative. And the emotion is there to say, incorrect, that's not how God sees you, right? But the ego is the great hijacker of emotions, and it uses them, it weaponizes them against us and says, ooh, see, you feel sad because it's true. You really are unlovable. That's why it feels bad. And it's very clever. It's a good trick. It almost always works.
Yeah.
But we have to come to see that our emotions are friendly messengers from our inner world. And so I give a couple of analogies for this, and I'll give you one that I think are helpful for clearing this up.
Yeah.
If a messenger on a horse comes riding into the king's castle from a faraway land, and he storms into the king's chamber and runs up and throws himself at the throne of the king on his knees and says, "My lord, a great army is approaching. Prepare the troops." You know, this is bad news, right?
Yeah, of course.
The king is not happy to hear this.
Yeah.
But does the king shoot the messenger? It's like, that's where the phrase comes from, right? Don't shoot the messenger. The king is very glad that the messenger brought him such terrible news, because he might have just saved the empire, right? And so it's like that with our emotions. When you feel sad, when you feel angry, when you feel afraid, you should see them as a friendly messenger coming to give you some uncomfortable news that, hey, you're thinking about yourself in a way that's out of alignment with the way reality sees you. And so you better get your thinking back on track, or you're going to start generating some negative karma. That's not going to feel good. So it's like, of course, those emotions have to feel bad, because if it felt good to think incorrectly, then I would keep believing in incorrect things about myself and thus go on suffering and creating negative karma. So it's like there have to be a warning, right? There has to be a buzzer that's uncomfortable to hear, but it wakes us up and it alerts us to, okay, there's a problem in my mind. If I feel negative, I must be thinking out of alignment with reality. And so sadness reflects the belief in lack, meaning anytime you feel sad, the sadness is there to show you, hey, you've got a lack belief at play right now in your mind. And so you can bring the emotion closer and say, thank you, sadness, for showing me that I believe I'm lacking something in this moment. So tell me, sadness, what do I believe I'm lacking? And I teach the reader in the book to ask the emotion the question, and it will show you the answer faithfully every time. When anger shows up, you can say, anger, thank you for showing me that I've got an attachment to an outcome right now. So anger, what outcome am I so attached to in this moment? And then boom, you see what it is. And then thirdly, if you feel afraid, anxious, stressed out, any fear-based emotion is reflecting to you, hey, you're trying to control something right now, and you need to surrender it to God. So you say, thank you, fear, for showing me that I'm trying to be in control of this moment. And what is it I'm trying to control? And then boom, you see what it is and you can surrender it. And this is the basic practice I teach in the book.
Oh, I love that. I mean, just asking those questions and pausing to really see emotions as information and data really can
Yep. Yep.
prevent you from acting out, and instead to think about, okay, what is this telling me about myself and about what's happening and what's causing me to feel triggered. But I think reaching
Yeah.
that level of detachment can be quite challenging. I mean, to get to that place where you can create some space between you and the emotion does take work. And it's not something we are taught growing up. We don't learn how to do this.
Right.
So um, I think it's worth looking into that and kind of building that muscle of being able to detach from what you're feeling. Um, I think it's important.
Yep. You're exactly
I
right.
mean, it took me a
I
while.
talk about in the,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it does take a while, because it's not innate to the ego operating system to not attach. The ego loves to attach. It's the only thing it knows. And so this practice of using your emotional guidance system to watch for these three beliefs all throughout your day, it's a daily practice. It doesn't happen overnight. I've been
Hmm.
doing this for the better part of 10 years now.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I'm at a place where it's very much second nature at this point. When I feel a negative emotion, I'm like, oh, what's the attachment here? I'm really frustrated. Or, man, what am I trying to control? I'm so stressed out. And then, boom, I see the answer and I surrender it to God. But
Yeah.
it wasn't like that for me at the beginning. It was very hard. I would sometimes go all day long feeling angry or stressed out until
Mm.
I'm laying in bed at night and I go, oh man, I've been feeling this emotion all day and I haven't even thought to question it yet. And that's to be expected, right? We got to be patient with ourselves in the
Yeah.
process.
What are your favorite practices, Aaron, when it comes to moving away from ego identification and going towards what you call no reason happiness?
Yeah, well, in the book, I have one chapter on each of the three beliefs. And then
Mhm.
the following chapter is a chapter about how to requalify that belief, or kind of the philosophical insight I was mentioning earlier of this is how to see this belief truthfully. Like, this is why this belief is not true. And that's what you really have to see to begin
Mhm.
requalifying the belief itself.
Sure.
And so I'll give you the one for the belief in lack, because again, all the beliefs really trace back to lack. And
Hmm.
so I say in the book, like, you almost don't even need to spend that much time trying to requalify belief two and three.
Yeah.
Just go to belief one every time. Because again, it's always a lack belief at the end of the day. And the way that I teach in the book is through a line from A Course in Miracles that really opened up the floodgates for me on this and just changed everything. And it's this line that says, only what I have not given can ever be lacking. And I read that and thought, man, that just feels so true. But I didn't really understand how it was true because ego is really only operating on the level of form. And so the ego, when it thinks about giving, it only thinks of giving forms like money, possessions, time, whatever.
Yeah.
And what that verse is really pointing to is not form, but essence, in that
Okay.
whether it's the nice sports car, the house, the guy, the girl, the job, whatever the
Mhm.
ego wants on the level of form, it's really just a symbol, right? That's pointing to a deeper essence of, I want to feel loved. I want to feel free. I want to feel
Yes.
empowered. There's an essence underlying everything. And so it's actually that there is no such thing as lack. There's just what we are withholding. And so lack is a withholding problem, not an absence problem. We don't actually lack anything, but if we don't give it, we can't have it. We can't experience it. And so giving is the proof of having on the metaphysical plane. But giving is an essence first. So, simple example, I'm lacking money. I'm so poor. My bank account is broke. Aaron, how do I give money when I have no money? This rule can't be true.
Hmm.
And I say, well, what does money represent to you? Well, it represents abundance. Great. So, how do you start giving abundance in your life? You can give abundance in infinite different ways. You can give an abundance of your time and attention to others, an abundance of love. You can give the cashier at the grocery store an abundant smile. But that's how it has to start, right? Start living abundantly within yourself, and you start giving out the essence of what money really represents to you. And then the universe says, oh, we've got a match here. But
Hmm.
when you withhold abundance from others, I hate everyone's so rich and I'm so poor, and you start despising the wealthy person, well, what are you telling the universe? I hate wealth, you know? So it's definitely not going to give it to you. So
Yeah.
instead, a way to give abundance would be I'm only going to celebrate abundance anywhere I see it. So I'm not going to be jealous and despising of rich people anymore. I'm going to say, thank you, God, for showing me what abundance looks like. I bless that rich person. I'm so grateful that they're abundant. And all of a sudden, you make yourself a match to the essence of your desire.
Yeah.
So giving is proof of having, and only what I don't give can ever be lacking. It's an inside problem, not an outside problem.
So interesting. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So it's just like peeling back the layers and looking what is really behind that desire that is driving you, because abundance is something that you can claim from anywhere, really. And
Yeah.
yeah, that is so key. Aaron, I really appreciate the insights you shared with us today. It was really eye-opening for me, and I'm sure that's the case for everyone else listening. Your insights and frameworks will definitely be a huge benefit to those tuning in. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm really grateful to hear that and really have enjoyed the conversation today. So thank you for the wonderful questions.
Absolutely. And you're doing a great job shining a light on the ego and the parts of ourselves that need care and attention. I think we need that now more than ever.
I would agree completely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to let our listeners and viewers know if you're interested in learning more and more about all these amazing concepts that Aaron shared with us today, please do pick up his book, The Three Beliefs of Ego: A Sufferer's Guide to Freedom. You can also check out his programs and courses at aaronabke.com. The link is down in the description.